All right, Krystal, what's on your radar?
Well, we've got some breaking news this morning. Deval Patrick has, in fact, officially joined the large presidential field.
I admire and respect the candidates in the Democratic field. They bring a richness of ideas and experience and a depth of character that makes me proud to be a Democrat. But if the character of the candidates is an issue in every election, this time is about the character of the country. This time is about whether the day after the election, America will keep her promises. This time is about more than removing an unpopular and divisive leader, as important as that is, but about delivering instead for you. So in a spirit of profound gratitude for all the country has given to me, and with a determination to build a better, more sustainable, more inclusive American dream for the next generation, I am today announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
All right, so here's what you need to know. Patrick served as Massachusetts governor from 2006 to 2012. And according to Politico, a who's who of Obama insiders had previously encouraged Patrick to jump into the race. That includes David Axelrod, Valerie Jarrett, and Mr. Obama himself. In addition to his political work, Deval Patrick has taken full advantage of the opportunities to cash in that are made available to prominent government officials. He was particularly well positioned given his own trailblazing status and background as a civil rights attorney. For example, shortly after Patrick settled a massive racial discrimination lawsuit with Texaco in his capacity at the DOJ, he walked right on through that revolving door over to work for Texaco as their VP and general counsel. Then he took a job as Coca-Cola's top in-house counsel shortly after they too settled a massive racial discrimination lawsuit. But perhaps most egregious was his time at subprime mortgage giant Ameriquest, a company famous for pressuring working-class families into taking on mortgages that they couldn't possibly hope to pay, and then brutally foreclosing on them and seizing their homes. And today, he's managing director at that singularly beloved American institution, Bain Capital. As Zach Carter at the Huffington Post put it, in corporate America, Patrick was not so much a reformer as he was a public relations figure. He gave corporations a story to tell about the good things they were supposedly doing, even when they were simultaneously busying themselves with very bad things. Rapacious, predatory corporatists with close ties to both Clinton and Obama world. Meet your 2020 dream candidate, ladies and gentlemen. I don't doubt that Patrick will be able to raise some money given his political and business ties and the incredible angst apparently gripping the Democratic donor community. But unless something truly wild were to happen, like Obama deciding to actually endorse him, I've got a pretty hard time imagining Patrick gaining much ground here. First of all, primary voters are actually quite satisfied with their choices. Those looking for a safe Obama throwback are good with Biden. Those looking for a more progressive traditional politician like Warren, and those who are in search of a more radical change are in for Bernie. What's more, Patrick is going to have a tough time making it into the debates that are left, given the difficult donor and polling thresholds. Is a grassroots movement going to spontaneously spring up to give a managing director of Bain Capital the 200,000 donations he would need? Not seeing that one. But that doesn't mean that Patrick's run won't impact the race. And there's one candidate who he could be particularly troublesome for. It's Elizabeth Warren. One of the strengths that Warren has is her status as neighbor to the first-in-the-nation primary state of New Hampshire. Her familiarity to New Hampshire voters and strength with affluent white liberals in particular is a big plus for her there, and it's part of why she's invested so heavily in the Granite State. But Deval Patrick hails from the same state as Warren, so he is also well known to New Hampshire voters, and he also could hold appeal for a certain affluent white demographic. He's a wine track candidate and she's a wine track candidate. And in New Hampshire right now, every tiny movement counts. Just take a look at this. This is the current RCP average of polls in New Hampshire, and it shows a three-way tie race between Biden, Warren, and Bernie. Moreover, this is a state that has at times seen Biden lead, at times has seen Warren lead, and at times has seen Bernie lead. It really is anyone's game. So even if Patrick steals a point or two from Warren, it could make all the difference. There's another element here to this as well, though. Warren may have created a bit of a mess for herself on this Deval Patrick situation. When she was recently asked by Angela Rye what 3 African Americans she must have in her cabinet, guess who topped the list? Bain Capital's own Deval Patrick. Here in part is Warren's response to Angela's question about African Americans in her cabinet.
It's about people who share the same vision and who don't just share the vision, who don't just see the big idea, but who have a real commitment to get out there and fight for it. That's what I want. I want fighters in my cabinet.
3 names?
Oh, you're making me cut off all the politicians. But if I can talk about people who aren't politicians, I talk about my former governor, Deval Patrick, who is a pretty terrific guy.
Pretty terrific guy. This response caught my eye at the time because any administration stocked with Texaco, Ameriquest, Bain Capital types is an administration that will do nothing but continue the current destruction of the working class. But given Deval's entrance into the race, it's really aged poorly and very quickly. As Ryan Grimm pointed out, Warren's name-checking of Patrick as somebody she'd welcome in her administration was quite an own goal. Makes it awfully hard to point out that he's a predatory capitalist by profession. Indeed. Kind of hard to be a predatory capitalist and a pretty terrific guy who you must have in a Warren cabinet. Now, I know a lot of the punditocracy is thinking Patrick could have his biggest early state impact in South Carolina, where it is simplistically believed that because he is black voters will move from the underwhelming Biden to back him. You can ask Cory Booker and Kamala Harris how that strategy is working out for them. Look, anything's possible, but it seems unlikely to me that Biden backers are looking to trade in Barack Obama's loyal 2-term vice president for a guy they don't really know, friend of Obama though he may be. After all, working class African Americans didn't ask Deval Patrick to get into the race. Wealthy elites did. And as we always say on this show, looking at who supports a candidate is way more important than who they claim to represent. So don't look at South Carolina. Keep your eye instead on New Hampshire. If Deval Patrick is going to make any kind of splash in the race, it will likely be there, and it will likely be to the detriment of Elizabeth Warren. Also, Senator Warren, with respect, please get some better answers on who you want in your cabinet, because this ain't it. So, Sagar,
Is it funny?
new elite pick in the Democratic primary.
What an own goal by Warren. Ryan could not be more correct. I mean, that basically neutralized the best single attack on somebody who is going to go right after her core constituency.
Her base, yeah.
Look, I don't think it's actually going to work. You need to be in these states. Roger Fisk, friend of the show, he's always talking about, if you're a serious person, 15 months before Iowa, you have to have an organization. 15 months before New Hampshire. You can't be pulling this 2 months before. That's just not how voters are. I mean, Iowa's a tough state to compete in. New Hampshire, Trump, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, they were battling out on the national airwaves for over a year before all of that happened, and the first votes were cast in the election. So if it were going to have an impact, it's going to have a marginal impact.
Yes.
But it's still bad for Elizabeth Warren.
That's the thing. When you look at the fact that it is truly a tied race in New Hampshire right now, and he is of the neighboring state, just that little bit could make a difference. But to your point, the level of arrogance.
I know.
To look at this field where people say, no, we like these, we're excited about these candidates, we like these candidates, we've got a lot of candidates to choose from. To look at that and think that you can get in so late when history shows this never works out. You're not going to be able to make the debate stage. You're not even independently wealthy the way that a Bloomberg is, where you can just throw, billions of money at the race. The level of arrogance to think that this is going to work, I really want to know what the thought process was and what he thinks his game plan is.
It's because this is one of the craziest things is when you start to rise up, is you start to meet people who make these types of decisions, and you're like, oh, you're not really that smart at all. You're not really you're not really critically thinking about this situation. These wealthy elites and others have told Deval Patrick, hey, unlike Pete Buttigieg, who we all love, you could actually make a splash with black voters. And Deval Patrick says, yeah, you know what? Maybe I could. Without discounting Cory Booker, or without even taking into account Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, the fact that Joe Biden has massive African American support in South Carolina, the fact that the candidate who younger African Americans all support is Bernie Sanders. What does that tell us? That this is about class. That's all it is. It's about class and it's about generation. Older African Americans support Joe Biden overwhelmingly, along with a lot of other boomers who are in the Democratic primary. Younger African Americans and younger Latinos support Bernie Sanders, just like younger white people. They cannot see beyond the identity framework that they've worked in politics for so long, and this whole election is about a repudiation of that.
He's a perfect boomer candidate. That's perfectly put. And in that lane, I think it's going to be very damaging to Pete Buttigieg too, who has risen from the merits of just overwhelmingly glowing media profiles. Well, now Deval Patrick and potentially Michael Bloomberg are going to suck up some of that positive media energy. So
we'll see.
Yeah, indeed. Next up on Rising, Donald Trump Jr. has not held back in his defense of his father and his criticism of the impeachment proceedings.
So I actually got a chance to speak with the first son for a conversation on the state of the GOP. His new book, Triggered, that when Rising continues.